Pensacola's finest, the story of the Pensacola Police Department. July 1821. Pensacola was under Spanish rule, but an agreement had been made with the United States, and the United States was to accept West Florida as a territory, a United States territory. President Madison sent Andrew Jackson down to become the temporary governor and to accept the territory and then to set up the government here. So he arrived in July, and on July 17th, he entered into the town. The big celebration at Ferdinand Plaza, the Spanish flag was lowered, the American flag was raised, symbolizing that West Florida now was a United States territory. Andrew Jackson stayed around a couple of days to make appointments and to lay out the plans, the boundaries for the city and things. Well, on July 19th, he appointed an alguazil, James Craig. An alguazil is the Spanish word for constable. So the first law enforcement officer in Pensacola was James Craig, and it started July 19th of 1821. Around that time, something that was interesting was the way that sentences or punishment was doled out from the courts. They had a pillory, which would be the instrument where somebody's head was stuck through and their arms were stuck through, clamped down, and then people would throw rotten eggs and garbage at them. They would be flogged, beaten. There was also tar and feathering, where they would cover somebody with tar and then put feathers on them, parade them up and down the street. There's one incident where a guy was tarred and feathered and then set on fire and paraded up and down the street. There was also another incident where a woman was sentenced to have her hand cut off and then be hanged. So they're a lot different than they are today. Not long after 1821, after the beginning, if you will, an incident happened that was kind of interesting. Thomas Jones was a mail carrier, and he carried mail mostly back and forth from Pensacola to what we now know as Defuniak Springs, or as Walton County. And he used the only trail that was available, which was called the Old Spanish Trail, and it had been used for years and years and years. It was the trail really linking the only two towns in Florida, or in this area, which was St. Augustine and Pensacola. But it was just a trail. It was pretty dangerous. It was fraught with a lot of different obstacles. Not only did you have to cross rivers, which in itself would be a problem, but you had the Native Americans, the renegades, that would attack constant. You were under threat of constant attack. You had wild animals, and you had bandits. Well, as Mr. Jones was delivering the mail, he was approached by two bandits, two guys, and one had a knife, one had a gun. The one that had the gun shot at him, but it missed his head barely. The other one swung at him with the knife, and he jumped back and it cut his clothes, but not him. So he escaped. He went to report the incident, and of course everybody knew who it was. They knew. They said, well, that's Martin Hutto. We know who that is because Martin Hutto has done all that stuff before. And he gave the description. They said, that's him. So a manhunt ensued. And they caught Martin Hutto, brought him back to the only jail in the area, which was in Pensacola. Now, the jail had been there for a long time. It had been there for probably close to 20 years, maybe longer. The newspaper in 1827 had reported that the jail was in deplorable condition. So they put him there. Same year, 1827. Didn't take him long to escape. He was gone. Just probably wasn't difficult. So They put out a reward for $50, and that was a lot of money in 1827. Well, he turned himself in about 2 weeks before the judge was supposed to come into town. He was confident that he was going to be found not guilty. And he got in, and they said, oh, by the way, the judge ain't going to be in town for another 10 months. Judge Brackenridge was a circuit judge, and he made the circuits. But because of sickness, it was taking him a lot longer. So, but they knew that Hutto was going to escape again. So this time they moved him to the military jail. Now, the military camp was called a cantonment. That's the Spanish word for camp. Cantonment Clinch, which was after their commander. Cantonment Clinch was located at the headwaters of Bayou Chico over on the west side of Pensacola. And that's where he was held in their jail. Well, it didn't take him long. He escaped from there. And they looked for him, and they looked for him. And finally, they located him, brought him back just in time for the judge. About 2 weeks later, the judge came in town. But he was confident. Wrong. They found him guilty. 2 years in prison. So it wasn't long after that, he thought, I'm not doing this. He escaped again. And they caught him. Now, keep in mind, the first time was from the regular jail in Pensacola. The second time was from the military jail, the camp. The third time was also from the regular jail, after he'd been sentenced. They caught him again and brought him back to the regular jail to serve his sentence. He escaped again. Never heard from him. So what'd they do? They fixed the jail. Now, if you fast forward from that time till the Civil War, Pensacola didn't fare as badly as a lot of places in the South before and after the Civil War because it had an international influence. People from all over that really weren't in the fight for the states' rights and the fight against slavery like a lot of southern places were. But they had some slave owners, and so when Florida seceded from the United States, the city fathers of Pensacola moved the entire city government to Alabama, and they conducted business from there. Quite honestly, most of the people left from the town anyway. There was probably only about 100 that were there. The Confederate government came in, declared martial law. Braxton and Bragg was the general. And so the civilian law enforcement didn't exist. Shortly after that, the Union came. The Confederates left. The Union came, and they occupied Pensacola, and they declared martial law. They held it till the end of the war in 1865. And in 1865, things, I'll say they returned to normal, which they weren't normal in the South, but they fared a lot better than other places did. And the law enforcement began to regain its authority and just picked up and kept going. In 1884, something happened. Now by this time they had 16 officers, and it was a good number, and they were the Pensacola police. Marshal Mallet was in charge. Well, there was a fad going on across the country where officers would suddenly, they thought, you know what, they need to wear uniforms. So Pensacola decided, we'll do it too. Get some of those uniforms. Well, here's the difference. Pensacola is in Florida. It's hot in the summer in Florida. It's hot in the winter in Florida. What'd they do? Wool. Wool pants, heavy wool jackets, brass buttons on the jackets, big brass badge, a heavy custodian helmet, which we know is a bobby hat, English bobby hat, with a shield on it, with laurel leaves. The officers had a truncheon they carried on their belt, which was a club. Now, their official uniform didn't include a pistol, but most officers carried one underneath their uniform. A A lot of the officers liked the Smith & Wesson 1844 revolver. Some liked the old single-action revolver. And there were even some that liked the old Civil War repeating pistol. But most officers carried some kind of a handgun under their